Okay, so this is just Mercury, and it's one aspect in the kingdom of aspects. And each one is like learning Chinese. Each picture is a different thing. Each of these aspects has a different picture. And you have to know how to work the picture, work the two layers of consciousness of how they affect each other. In this case, it's an outer planet, so it's affecting Mercury. You're not trying to see it the other way. Now, Neptune, the planet of romance and adventure, when it hits Mercury, conjunct, squares, or opposed, it creates the visionary. I see the dream. I see the vision. But it also creates the deluded, perhaps dishonest, gullible, deceptive thinking. It's a person can be interdependent on other people, can't think unless you're thinking for them, or they can be very manipulative, it can be seductive. Well, so seductive is not the right word, that's more with Venus. So it would be more visionary thinking or deceptive thinking or guilty thinking or haunted thinking. You can be so sure something's real as you're out to lunch. It's like driving impaired. So some people have Mercury and Neptunes, they have the weirdest fantasies and ideas. Now for a writer or an artist, that could be a real plus. So it can be channeled, there's ways to channel these things clearly, but they're not going to think like everyone else. They're going to be trying to escape from the normal ways of thinking, getting past that, and they're going to try and go for romance and vision. They can be trying to do all the thinking for you, or thinking what they're thinking is you totally believe in what they're thinking. And how can anyone totally believe in what someone else is thinking? Because we all have our own ways of processing and thinking. It's a function. But it tends to be gullible. Gullible, deceptive, distorting, magnifying your ideas, embellishing things. It's like looking through rose-tinted glasses. You see things in a certain way that isn't exactly the practical way to see it. So a poet might have a Mercury Neptune. A movie writer, let's say the producer, the director, but the writer of a movie or a script or book could have that. It's very imaginative. But if you're trying to get someone to focus on math or in school, it can be really spaced out too. Oh, wow, and what's happening? Usually when you have the Mercury Neptune, somebody's been telling you what to do, you're feeling guilty or lost about it, and you're struggling to get your own self-reliance in your own thinking. So sometimes it's hard to write exams and do things because you space out. And then you have to, usually you have to make a real effort to counter these outer planet aspects. Because they create, when it comes to outside things, the ability to get excited with Uranus, or to get lost, or to not be confused about the meaning, or to be, and if you're slightly confused, other people can take advantage of you, of course. Or you can be trying to take advantage of others. So this can go from deceptiveness in business to messianic thinking, to someone else, to preaching to someone else, to feeling guilt-ridden to someone else. It'll go through spectrums. But if you have Mercury, Neptune, what's reality? What's real? What thoughts are real? Which thoughts are good? Which thoughts are bad? What do we go with? It's like the mind is always being tempted to think outside, beyond the box, without taking care of the basic alertness in the moment. Whew. So all of the factors of Neptune, it's almost like Mercury's better off not even thinking about Neptune, leaving it out there, leave the belief and faith and the rapture and those things out there, and just keep alert to what you have to take care of today. But the more you get obsessed with a group, a cult, an idea, a dream, a vision, a romance, I mean, a stalker would probably have a Mercury Neptune because they're dreaming of trying to, I gotta be with you, it should be this, it's gotta be this, I gotta get back to this, can't, I'm the soulmate, you can't be with anyone else. Like, you can convince yourself all kinds of things with Mercury Neptune. And to fix it, it's usually a question of keeping choices simple, not taking on too much. I'm going to go to university, I'm going to take 10 courses. No, you're better off to take simple and go simple and take an extra year to get there. So when you have Mercury Neptune, Mercury Uranus, Mercury Neptune, they're vulnerabilities, and you usually have to counter them. And usually you counter them by accentuating maybe talent, Venus, maybe your habits, moon. You accentuate it by making other planets stronger to compensate for the not thinking clearly. At the same time, there is an element of visionary thinking, very abstract, visionary, mystical thinking that can be really positive with it. But even though it's positive, other people aren't going to be able to hear you that well. So someone could know everything and have trouble writing. They can't focus enough to write or know how to separate it out. So the lack of boundaries, Neptune makes a lack of, dissolves boundaries. And without boundaries, the mind spaces out. It has trouble discriminating. Okay. So the temptations, the confusions, the idealisms, the deceptions, the sorrows, the guilts, the dependencies, the expectations of Neptune come and affect the Mercury. So a difficult Mercury, you say something, you're always expecting a response, or maybe you think you know what the other person's saying before they're thinking, or they're always, and it's not really true necessarily. But it's hard to get out of these complexes. You have to grow beyond it. Doesn't mean you have to get rid of it. You just have to realize it processes that way and navigate it without making matters worse. Finding a good way to use it. Always the puzzle is the planet and the sign and the house. And usually we don't see Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto as personal factors. It's whole generational factors affecting the way we think. Okay. To Pluto, the outermost, well, the outermost of the planets we're using, the main planets we're using. There can be more added, but this is, Pluto's the Auditor General, the reality check, truth and consequences act. It's brutal truth. So Mercury to Pluto is really harsh, sharp thinking. It's brilliant thinking. It's harsh and sharp, but it can be fearful. It can be paranoid. It can be really sharp. It can be very controlling, but it's a strong mind. It's very astute. It's great for astrology. But it tends to be overpowered, either over-threatened or overpowered, talking really strongly, and there's a tendency to think I have to fight for my own way of thinking. So there's a harshness that comes with Mercury Pluto. It can create, but usually even the pressure there creates sharp thinking, but even though it's a little bit paranoid or contradictory or confrontational thinking. I guess confrontational thinking would be the way, whereas Mars is challenging or argumentative. Pluto is confrontational. That's I'm into astrology. That's the work of the devil. That's hard. You know, like it's harsh judgments. It's going to be very different in cardinal, fixed, or mutable signs. So whenever there's conjunctions, squares, or oppositions, they're usually in the same sign or in the same mode. Sometimes it can fluctuate on the edge of a sign. But Pluto harshens Mars. It makes it real. How could there be a God? That's nonsense. It's got to be this. It's like watching the news and living by the news as if it's real. So when it's positive, it's a brilliant capacity to think and make sense, to find solutions to real problems, or to walk into real problems and be able to think clearly of what has to be done. When it's negative, fears can affect your thinking. And you can pull in because you're afraid of what's out. So it's not the excitement of Uranus, not the dreaminess and the romance of Neptune. It's the reality. So you got a real mind. You're trying to, that's bullshit. That's not real. That's not true. This is true. This is what's real. You're looking for those real anchors. As a consequence, you're very controlled in how you communicate or express yourself. Okay, now I got a packed Mercury. So having a whole bunch of stressful aspects to Mercury, it can cause certain personal difficulties, but it doesn't mean your life is ruined. Like I've got Mercury conjunct Mars and Jupiter. Tend to exaggerate for effect. It's okay for a teacher. But when I'm telling stories, I almost always magnify them a little bit and I have to cut them back. You know, and then when I remember things, there's a tendency to read into it more. But I also have the Mercury square Saturn, which gives some restraint to listen, to pause on it. I also have the Mercury square Pluto, so I have a tendency to be paranoid and think what's wrong out there. Either way, I'm trying to fight for understanding and what's right and what's wrong, and I'm fighting against injustice and things. And it's not been a peaceful thing in my life. It's been a thorn, but it's created a lot of work, and a lot of the work I did, I don't think I would have done any of the research with astrology. Astrology let me look at these things, see the reality, and start using my mind and really powerfully taking on mental challenges. But when it comes to talking with the wife or the kids, I tend to think too severely. So as an astrologer, I can see the severeness. Oh, this can go this severely, or this can go that wrong. Then I got to figure, well, well, I would do it this way, then how do I say, well, what would work for you? Then the Jupiter kicks in, then the Saturn kicks in, and I come up with a plan. So these things all work at the same time. And once I get the fearful insight or the difficult insight of what the problem is, once I see the darkest point in the chart, then I can see, okay, I got to work this way. How am I going to work with it? How do you fix the vulnerability? How do you work with it? But any aspect of Mercury Pluto is sharp thinking, harsh thinking, clear thinking, real powerful thinking, but not comfortable. You know, it's so usually there's a mentor, positive or negative, and I had to work through a lot of abuse of my dad. Not that I didn't love my dad, but I hated him for a long time too. Okay. So in the stories of our life, these things will come up. They'll pulse. There'll be times when it's a big negative extreme. Then we'll have to react to it. It fades off. It comes up. When we get to the timings, we start to see this. What we're seeing with the aspects is a predisposition to what we attract. Now we've looked at our feeling, our memories, and our way of thinking and being alert. Those are primary functions of our inner being, of who we are. So it can't just be memorizing a sentence and saying this sentence and that sentence and thinking that's enough. So I wanted to strengthen these things. By transits, we watch the outer planets. In the progressions, we watch the evolution of the Mercury, Moon, and Venus. The Mercury, Venus especially, and the Sun. We see these evolve, and then we can see how they grow and how they affect the outer things in our life, or our response to outer things in our life. Whew. Okay, now we got to go to Venus. There's no end to this. It just keeps going. So it's mostly a process of making the associations yourself, seeing them, and being able to wonder and puzzle it. Look at the positive, look at the dark side of it. Look at how's that stress going to show? And start using your imagination around it, and then observe how people are using it. With Mercury, it's hard because our mind changes all the time. We're thinking it has so many multifunctions. These outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, can hit on one specific nerve and affect all the others, or one level of functioning. You have to observe to see how it's fun. You can't say, oh, you're like this. You have to, there's a predisposition to be this in your chart. How is it working? And you look to see. And a kid well, this is there in the chart. You're explaining to the parents, say, well, how does that show? They'll know. You know, and often they'll correct, oh, it's not exactly like this, but it shows like this. And then you get more lucid and you get more tuned into a person. Okay, that's thinking. And to get clear thinking, free of emotions, free of moods and memories, boy, some people have an ability to do that. Some people don't. It's tangled up with everybody because their feelings seem more real than their thoughts. Or their family is more real than their future or their goals. Okay.